Hello everyone, I'm Aaron from DataStax, and today I'm going to take you through using the Data API with HCD. All right, let's go. All right, so I'm going to start out in Mission Control here, and I'm going to sign in. Now, if I have a look at my clusters, I know that my permanent waves cluster is my HCD cluster, and you can see that it is indeed running HCD 1.0.0. You'll also notice that if I focus on my Entre Nous data center, that I have the Data API enabled, which will be important for this demonstration. As I've said in many of these other videos, be sure you've exposed the Data API on port 8181. You'll also want to make sure that you build your cluster's token. Specifically, in my case, I need to run a kube control command to get mine. And it responds with this data payload. But the idea is that you can piece it together by specifying your token as the word Cassandra, the base 64 encoded username, and then the base 64 encoded password. So the whole thing kind of comes out something like that. Important to note, but you will need this for the next steps that follow. So now, if we have a look at Postman here, you can see that I already have my URL set, and that is the IP address that is exposed for the Data API service on my HCD cluster. Now you note I'm going to follow it with a /v1 on the end, which is also important. Additionally, you'll want to set a few headers. Of course, you have the standard accept content type of application JSON. You want to make sure those are in. But from the last slide that I showed, you want to make sure that you take your token and put it into the value field here. Now, the first thing we want to do here, and you can see that I have several of these methods like pre-made here. The first thing we're going to do is create a namespace. So we're going to start out with the create namespace command. I'm going to make sure that command is in double quotes. I'm going to add a colon. So I'm going to say name default key space. When you're working with the Data API and a lot of the clients that we've built out for AstroDB, the default namespace, if you don't specify one, is default key space. So that's what we're going to specify here, just to be kind of on the safe side. All right, I'm also going to want to specify something for options. And in our options, this is where we're going to specify our key space properties. So I'm going to say replication. Oh, want a colon there, not a semicolon. And we want, got to double quote that, class. And we want network topology strategy, again, just like we would in DSE or Cassandra. And then we're going to specify a replication factor of 3 for our Entre Nous data center. Just like that. Okay, now if I did this correctly, it should create that namespace. Hey, we have a 200 OK. Outstanding. All right. So now that we have our namespace, let's go ahead and create a collection. So in the next one here, this one's going to be a lot simpler. I'm going to start out similarly with some JSON, and I'm going to use the create collection command. And with create collection, the only property that I need to specify is the name of the collection. And I'm going to call this one albums, just like that. Oh, you'll also notice that I updated my URL here to pass the name of the namespace actually in the URL. So let's go ahead and send that through. Okay, so now that we have our collection created, let's look at getting some data in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is use this insert1 command. So I'm going to start out just as I had before, insert1. And when I use a colon there, I'm going to create a document inside of braces here. So we'll say document, and then the properties of our document, I'm going to use title, and we'll say 2112. And for the property of band, we'll say Rush. And for year, we're going to say 1976, just like that. All right, let's try that out. Well, there we go. So we've inserted one document into our albums collection, which you'll notice was added on the end here of our URL. And in the response here, we did get a 200 OK, but we also received the ID of the inserted document. So, you know, let's test something out here, and we're just gonna copy that, and we're gonna do a find one here instead. So let's start that out with the find one command. I'm going to specify a filter. All right. And inside my filter, I'm going to say we want to check for the ID column, and then we're going to paste in our ID right there. Let's try that. Okay. As you can see, by sending a find one with a filter of ID equal to the ID that was returned to us from our insert one, you can see that we do in fact get our document back. So excellent, that worked. All right, so next we're going to insert many. Now, I have this one kind of created ahead of time. I have a whole bunch of, you know, albums kind of listed here from a few different bands. So we'll go ahead and we'll insert those in. There we go. And in this case, you can see we get a whole bunch of IDs back. One for each document that was successfully inserted. So now let's go ahead and build the get by band method here. And to do that, it's going to be similar to how we built our find one. So I'm going to start with this, but just say find instead of the find one command that we used. And then let's say we want to build a filter just like we did before. We're going to filter on the field band, and we're going to use the equal operator, and we want to filter on albums from the band Rush. Now I will send that through. All right, and as you can see, we got our 200 OK, and we received several records back. So it looks like this all is working. Okay, let's pivot here a little bit and actually build an application which uses the Data API and all of this data. Okay, so here inside my Java project in Eclipse, you can see I used the Spring Boot framework to create a new web application. I'm using Vaadin for the front end, and we're also going to pull in our AstroDB Java client. And it's actually going to be able to connect to the Data API that's hosted by our HCD cluster. The main view for the web application is pretty simple. You know, I'm adding in like a search button, you know, a way to show like the list of bands, you know, a way to show the band images, and, you know, maybe some of that other data as well. If you look over here, I actually have the images named after the albums, just minus all the spaces. So that's how we're going to match these up without having an album image field. If I go ahead and look at the controller that I've built here, you can see that we're pulling in some things from the Spring framework. We're pulling in some things from the you know, Astra Java client to help us build this all out. And if you remember, the filter operator that we used was the equality one, and we're going to pull that in too because we're gonna need that as well. So if I look through here, you can see I'm also pulling in my my token and my API endpoint, kind of similarly to how it had things set up in Postman. Now I have three methods here that I need to build out: the get one album, get albums by band, and get all albums. Let's take the easy one first. We'll just do get all albums. So really, this is pretty simple. All I'm going to do here is return. Now you notice I have my collection here defined as a private variable in this class. So I can just say collection dot find, just like that. And as long as I have my default collection, or my collection set to albums in the default key space, this will work just fine. Now if I wanted to get one album, let's just say that, we could do a return, and it's just going to be collection.find by ID. And you can see it's brought my album ID parameter into there already. So that will work just fine. And similarly, in get albums by band, we're just going to return, a collection.find, similar to how we did for get all, but inside the find, we're going to specify a filter. We're going to use that equality operator, and we're going to specify the field of band. And then as a second parameter, we're going to pass the band parameter that was passed into this method right there. Okay, so that should do it for our application. Nice and simple. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, looks like our application is running out on port 8080. Let me go up to a browser and say localhost 8080. There we go. We have our DS Albums application running. You can see over here we have a complete list of all of the albums that are in our collection. This is a result of the find all that we did. And if you remember, we actually did that inside of Postman as well. And the idea is that I can go through and click on, any of these albums listed here, and it'll show the detail. So this is actually a map that's keeping like the album IDs as well as the album titles. So when we show the titles here and then click, it sends the ID through to get album by ID. And then I also have it set up so that we can search by band name, in which case it will send whatever text we put here to the find albums or get albums by band. So I can say Pink Floyd and say search, and we have our 4 Pink Floyd albums that are in here, like The Wall, Momentary Lapse of Reason, Dark Side of the Moon, and Wish You Were Here. I can also search by Dire Straits. And yep, we get Love Over Gold and Communique and Brothers in Arms. And, just like we had an example inside of Postman, I can also search by Rush. And, yep, there's Moving Pictures and Clockwork Angels and, of course, 2112. So, yeah, this is all working, and it's all running on the Data API in HCD. For more information, head on out to datastax.com/products/hyperconverged-database HCD. Here, you can find all you need to know about HCD, including documentation and downloads. Thank you, and have a great day.